So I want to welcome everybody here, and today is kind of a first in a few ways, or a special day in a few ways. One is it's our first event of the year, and it's the first time that many of you who have been at the Abbey before have been able to be here when the building is finished and when we're able to live in it and use it. And you've gone through over a year of construction with us, where everything's just been a construction site. So it's nice to finally have the building and be able to use it. And so we really welcome you for that. And today is also one of the 4 special Buddhist holidays in the year. It's what we call a merit multiplying day, in that it celebrates an anniversary that's very special. There's only 4 of these in the Buddhist calendar, and so it's said that everything positive and wholesome that you do that day, the impact is really multiplied many, many times. So the story behind this, because today is the full moon of the first month in the Tibetan calendar. I know it's the second month in the Chinese calendar, and I don't know what month it is in the Thai calendar. What month is it in the Thai calendar? Yeah, but anyway, everybody has a different way of calculating, but it is the full moon. And so according to the Tibetan way of making calendars, the full moon of the first month is called the Day of Miracles. The story behind it is that when the Buddha was alive, at his time there were many other wanderers and different, there were the Brahmins and with their rituals, and then many other groups of wanderers and different kind of mendicants and spiritual people. And a lot of people were practicing to get great supernormal powers and do miraculous feats. And people really respected them and thought, oh, these guys are really high and holy, they can do all these special things. You can see that today, people kind of are very attracted. When there was Sai Baba who could, pull things out and make things, all I can do is pull out some tissues. But he could make things come out. People are very impressed with this. So there was a group of matted hair ascetics. These people were very ascetics, didn't comb their hair, saved a lot of money on the barber. And but they'd practice these kind of powers, and so they were challenging the Buddha to a competition of miraculous powers. And the Buddha kept saying no, because he said this is not the purpose of the path, this is not what we're doing our spiritual practice for. And he didn't want to mislead people into thinking that, this was what spirituality was all about. But these people kept asking and asking and asking, and so finally he agreed. And of course, his miraculous powers far outshone theirs, and they thereby became the Buddha's disciples. Yeah, but it's so although we celebrate that as a special day, I think the real message for me is that the spiritual practice is not about doing something fancy and exotic or supernormal on the outside. It's doing something really extraordinary inside of our hearts. And what is that extraordinary thing we do inside of our hearts is we free ourselves from ignorance, anger, and clinging attachment. And we cultivate love and compassion, wisdom, concentration, and so on. Yeah, so I think that's the important thing to always remember when we're looking at paths, at teachings, at teachers. What are we really aiming for? Do we want some grand display of something fancy, Or do we want some inner transformation that is going to enable us not only to be more peaceful ourselves, but to contribute to the welfare of other living beings and create a more peaceful society and a more peaceful planet? Okay? And then another way that today is unique is there's a group called, let me see if their name is on this. No, it's not. It's a group. I get their kind of email. I'm on their email list. They found me somehow, but it's a group of clergy from many different religions who are all concerned about gun violence, and who all would very much like to have stronger rules and regulations about guns in order to protect people from the havoc that they can create. And so today is their non-violent, I forget, they called it a Sabbath of non-violence, and so they asked everybody to please talk about gun control and peace and things like that. So, and they sent this little thing with some statistics. So I thought I would just talk for a moment about that before getting into today's topic. And to preface this by saying, for me, gun control is not a political issue. Yeah, it has nothing to do with politics. To me, it has to do with safety. It has to do with public health, and it has to do with people being able to be free of worry and fear. Yeah. So for me, it's much more an ethical issue. It's not a thing of politics. But to say that, because this whole thing of having background checks for guns, I think is a very good idea. When we hear the anecdotes of what has happened, I think having background checks is a good idea, and banning assault weapons is a good idea, and all these kinds of things. I read a story last week. This was really shocking for me. It happened in Texas. Of course, Texas. Anybody here from Texas? There are a few states where I wouldn't want to live in. Texas is one of them. Arizona is another. Yeah, Kentucky's kind of getting there too. It's up on the list. But a father heard some noise up in his daughter's bedroom. It was, in the morning when he was getting up to go to work and she was getting up to go to school. And he went in the bedroom, and his daughter was 16, and there was a boy there, 17 years old. And he shot the kid and killed him. Yeah, so I don't know, if I assumed it was probably one of her friends. I don't know any more than that. But, kind of getting shot and killed like that. And I was thinking wow, okay, the father's life, is going to be a mess. The boy's dead. And the girl, her whole life is going to feel like it was her responsibility. And she'll probably blame herself. So there you've, destroyed three lives. Whereas, okay, the father might have been angry, but if he didn't have a gun handy, the whole situation would have been very different. Yeah. not to mention, did you hear about the one, I forget which state this was in, somebody may know, where one man was texting in the movie theater because his child was sick? Do you remember what? What? Florida. Oh, yeah, Florida's on that list too. Yeah, it was Florida. And they were in a movie theater. His little toddler daughter was sick, so he was texting the babysitter. The man behind him got mad, so they started quarreling. And this guy stood up, and apparently he was holding some popcorn, and a few popcorn things hit him. And the other guy said he felt threatened, and he shot him dead right there in the movie theater. It's like, when I was a little kid, I used to watch Cowboys and Indians on Sunday mornings. Did you watch that? Yeah. There were Cowboy and Indians and World War II movies on Sunday morning. And cartoons, and I don't know which of the three were more violent. Yeah. Which is one reason I stopped watching television quite young. That this kind of thing is an acceptable way to solve conflict in the world. Yeah, that you have a disagreement with somebody, and that violence to the point of shooting somebody over whether they're texting in a theater. Yeah. Or, of course, we have Trayvon Martin, and then we have this other boy who was killed recently, too, because they were playing their music too loud. Was that one in Florida also? Yeah. And so they killed one teenage boy, because the guy said he was playing his music too loud, and he said that the kid held up a shotgun to him, but the kid didn't have a shotgun. Anyway, that using violence is an acceptable way to deal with differences of opinion. To me, it's like to me that is unacceptable. I don't care what level you're talking about, national, international, personal. Yeah. Violence is not an acceptable way to sort out differences. And when you have guns predominant, plus people who have tempers, then you're going to have a lot of violence and a lot of unnecessary pain and suffering and death. So let me just read you these statistics, because the idea was that this is in 16 states and the District of Columbia, where a background check is required for all handgun sales. Okay, so these states where you need background checks for handguns. Yeah, I don't know, maybe they sell assault weapons without a background check, I don't know. But 38 fewer women are killed with a gun by an intimate partner. Yeah. So as we all know, our Washington State Legislature did something really good the last few weeks. Yeah. And they banned being able to, if you have an injunction, what is it called? A restraining order against you in a domestic dispute, you are not allowed to buy a gun. Duh. Finally, they passed a law about that. But when you think of the number of women, especially who are killed, so 38 fewer percent where they have background checks. In terms of suicides, 49% fewer suicides in states where they have background checks. Isn't that amazing? There was just last summer in, it was across the border. I don't know if it was in Sandpoint or Athol, one of the places around there. And it was one, and I heard the story because one of our friends' mothers volunteered at this hospital, and there was an anesthesiologist, so quite educated man who was in the middle of a divorce, and he, with a couple of young kids, and he was so distraught that he killed himself. And the whole hospital, everybody was just, couldn't do anything. They were beside themselves. And I thought, he took his own life, but his ex-wife's life, she's going to carry this around her whole life. The kids, little kids, are going to carry this around their whole lives, And I was thinking, he was so distraught about the divorce that he did this. But if he didn't have a gun, he very well might still be alive. Guns just make it so much easier to act impulsively when the mind is uncontrolled. So 49% fewer suicides. That's amazing. Okay, 39% fewer police officers are murdered with a handgun that was not their own. So that's pretty big too. I mean, I would think that all the police would be out there wanting more background checks and all of this. I mean, how do they do their job? It's so dangerous now. Okay, and then 64% fewer crime guns are exported to other states. Yeah, so the idea is that background checks save lives, and for us to all consider this and let our legislators know about this and support these kinds of methods. Okay.
An initiative on that this summer will actually directly vote on background checks in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, for every kind of weapon. So they're doing an initiative now to get it on the ballot. Wow.
And it's already will be on the ballot.
It's on the ballot for November. Fantastic.
It will be confusing because the other side will have one as well. So you just want to pay close attention to it. One will be preventing it, and the other one will be requiring it. It'll be very confusing.
Oh, goodness. Do you know the numbers?
I don't know the numbers.
Okay. Well, maybe when it gets closer to the time, come back and tell us, okay? So we'll know what to vote yes on and what to vote no on. Yeah, because sometimes the way they word the measures, it's really hard to tell. Because you're voting on should they ban to repeal the contradiction to this and that. And it's like, huh? Okay. So now I should probably get to the verse for today. Okay. So we've been going through Don't Believe Everything You Think. The previous Sharing the Dharma Days, the talks on the previous verses are all on the web, right? Yeah? Video, on YouTube, right? We're also making a website called Tuten Children Books, and all those videos will be on there. I don't know if they're up yet. I don't think so. But anyway, you can get the previous ones. So this is verse 12, and this is 37, and this text is a very beautiful, it's a poem, a Tibetan poem from many centuries ago, about the path and about how to practice the path and how to transform adversity into the path. So this particular section is about transforming distressing events. And so verse 12 is the first one, and it's about living with loss. Okay, so even if someone out of strong desire steals all your wealth or has it stolen, dedicate to him your body, possessions, and your virtue, past, present, and future. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Okay, so a bodhisattva is somebody who has equal and spontaneous compassion for every sentient being and who aspires to attain full awakening so that they themselves will have the wisdom, compassion, and power to be of the greatest benefit to others. Okay, so this is the way the Bodhisattvas practice. Even if someone out of strong desire, so somebody really wants your stuff, steals all your wealth or has it stolen. Okay, so they're not just taking your pen and forgetting to give it back. Okay, takes all your wealth. And this doesn't mean that they necessarily break into your house and do it. In fact, they can do it by depriving you of your house. Take people's wealth. A lot of what Wall Street has done is involved in, that. So unfair policies, the greed of some people, even though they have quite a bit, wanting more, wanting better. So we're not talking here necessarily about, people who are identified as thieves who come to rip off your stuff. Okay, but steals your stuff or has it stolen, so they may not steal it themselves, but they have somebody else go out and take your stuff. Yeah? So how do you feel when somebody stole your stuff? Yeah. The first thing as sentient beings we cherish is our life. That's more important than anything. The second thing is the things that keep us alive. Yeah? So, our things are very important to us. The relationships are very important to us too. The future verses will talk a little bit more about when relationships face problems. But this one's concentrating mostly on possessions. Okay, so we need some possessions just to stay alive. So, when your stuff is stolen, on one hand, depending what's stolen and how much of it, it could be very difficult for you to have food, clothing, shelter, medicine. Okay? But beyond that, when something is stolen, there's a feeling of being violated in some way. Yeah? A feeling that you're no longer safe, that you can't trust, or that you're not in a secure situation. I remember one time, this was when I was living in India, I was doing a retreat and I was in a cabin up the hill, and there weren't any other people staying around where I was. There were people further down the hill. It wasn't too far away, but just in the immediate area there wasn't anybody else. And I went out for a walk after lunch one day, and when I came back, I noticed my clock and my pen were gone. I didn't have anything of value. My clock was my most valuable thing, and probably the pen after that. But somebody had taken them. And there was this feeling of like, oh wow, like somebody came in here without my permission and just took it. Like this feeling of violation of your space in some way. And I was thinking, if somebody had come to me and said, I'm really desperate, or my family is, explained the situation, can I have your clock? I would have said, sure. Yeah. But the way this was done, there's a special kind of feeling that you have when your things are stolen. So what is our usual response when somebody takes our stuff? Anger. Yeah, we're mad. And what do we usually do when we're mad because somebody took our stuff? We lash out. Yeah. So we may lash out verbally. Yeah. If your teenager goes in your wallet and takes your money. Yes, this happens in families, doesn't it? Maybe we won't talk about that. But it happens, doesn't it? Yeah. Oh, it's all the family money. I want something. I'll go in Mom's purse, Dad's wallet. Yeah. So, in that kind of situation, you're angry, but it's also somebody you love, and that makes it kind of doubly difficult. Yeah. So you may, really yell and scream and whatever. Yeah. I dare not do that as a child because I knew what the result would be. Yeah. To me, the vision of a hell realm is where people just scream at you all the time. Yeah? That to me, when they first talked about the hell realms, that's what I imagined. Yeah, not physical pain or anything, but somebody screaming at you all the time. Anyway, it was enough deterrent in my family. But yeah, so it comes out, our anger comes out in our speech. And it also comes out, in our actions. Beating somebody up, taking out your gun, whatever it is. And then actions are done very impetuously, and then we have to live with the results for the rest of our lives. Yeah. And so, you can see there's this thing of, the feeling of hurt or violation or fear, and then a grasping at mine. This is mine. This loss endangers me. I'm not safe. That was my stuff. Yeah, they're not treating me with respect by doing this. And then the anger coming, and then words coming or speech coming. Yeah, and then the results, the immediate results that we experience, and then the long-term results. Yeah, the karmic results that ripen in future lives. Okay? And so none of these results are going to necessarily be good because they're coming from a mind of anger and a mind of concern with my stuff. Yeah, so much emphasis on mind. So there's going to be unpleasant results this life, unpleasant results future life. Yeah. And even if we get our stuff back, there might be a sense of, okay, I've gotten it back, but then what else? What comes along with that? Okay, so as somebody who is trying to develop love and compassion and the quality of generosity, okay, so as people who are practicing a spiritual path, trying to overcome our attachment, our anger, our clinging at I and mine, okay, then the advice that Tongme Zampo, the author of this poem, gives us is dedicate to him your body, possessions, and your virtue, past, present, and future. And you look at it and you say, what? Yeah? What? Here's somebody who's ripped me off, and I'm supposed to not just give him my stuff mentally. Yeah, as long as he has it, might as well give it mentally. But in addition, I'm supposed to dedicate my body and my possessions and my virtue, all of these in the past, present, and future, to this beep, 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 who, thinks he can just take my stuff by, doing something with the mortgages or doing something, whatever it is. Yeah. And, and so our first reaction when we hear this is, no way. This is ridiculous. I should catch the guy, put him in prison, throw away the key. That's it.
No, give my stuff back first, then put him in.
Yes. Okay. That's right. Give me my stuff back first. then put him in prison.
In Texas.
Yeah. Yeah. So, we have to look, and the advice we're getting is the exact opposite. And that's the way it is in all the verses in this poem, that we're hearing the exact opposite of what our egotistical mind wants to hear. Yeah, because our self-centered mind, we have our own idea of how to react. And yet we want to consider ourselves as loving, compassionate, generous, but only to certain people who act in certain ways at certain times, and not to other people who act in other ways at other times. Okay, so our love and compassion and generosity are quite restricted according to whether somebody pleases us or displeases us. Okay, so we see, I would love, we look at Mother Teresa, the Dalai Lama, or whoever, I would love to be able to just give with a free heart. But then we find a situation like this happens, and no, absolutely not. Yeah. And so that's why these verses are all the opposite of what we want to hear. Yeah, because how are we going to overcome that clinging? It's by doing the opposite of what our self-centered mind is holding on to. Okay? So this verse, when it's talking about giving our body possessions and virtue, it's also alluding to a particular practice we have in Tibetan Buddhism called the taking and giving practice, or the Tibetan term is Tonglen. And it's a practice that you do to help increase your love and compassion. Yeah, where we imagine taking others' suffering from them and experiencing it ourselves. And then taking our body and imagining transforming it into whoever or whatever others need and sending it out. We imagine taking our possessions, again, transforming them into whatever others need, and doesn't matter who these people are, where they are, sending them what they need. And then also taking our virtue and multiplying it and sharing it and dedicating it for others so that they can experience the results of the virtue, the positive karma that we ourselves have created. So it's a particular practice we do where we imagine giving these three away. Okay, we always start on the level of imagination, because if you can't imagine it, you're never going to be able to do it. Okay, so we imagine with our body, transforming it, sending it out, with our possessions, multiplying, transforming them, sending it out. Same with our virtue. Okay, and then the purpose of that meditation is to really, by being able to imagine giving these things away, and imagine the happiness and delight that other people will experience when they have these, then since that works on our own mind to, when you think of somebody being happy from getting something and that you were able to give it to them, it brings a joy in our own heart. There's a feeling of taking delight in giving, and just the happiness that comes in the act of giving, not the act of getting or receiving. Okay? And so, what Tongwe Zampo is telling us here is, here's a perfect opportunity to give. Somebody has taken from you. Yeah? You don't have to worry and think about what shall I give them. They've told you. Yeah. And so, you mentally give it to them, okay? Yeah. And then, and you also imagine giving them even more, okay? Now, we have to take this in context. Yeah, very important. It doesn't mean that every time somebody asks you for something that you give it to them. Okay? The case in point, the teenager who's taking stuff from mom and dad's wallet. Okay? To just say, what do you want? How much is your dope going for now? Let me know and I'll cover. Or how much whiskey do you want? That's not being kind to your child, and simply giving your child everything they want isn't being kind to them either. And letting them continue that kind of behavior certainly isn't being kind to them. Okay? So in telling us to give our body possessions and virtue, past, present, and future, it isn't saying be stupid in practical situations in such a way that our quote generosity becomes something detrimental to somebody. If you have a child who's doing that, they need to learn about respecting other people's property and, not getting everything that they want when they want it, and working for their own money and certain things. They need to learn other things that are going to help them more in life. Okay, so when you imagine giving them your body, possessions, and merit, it's not that you're opening your wallet and your bank account. You're giving them. You be a good example in your life, so that they have a good role model for how to respect other people's property. Yeah, you give them an opportunity to work, so that the child can work and earn their own money and learn to manage money. Yeah, so there's other things you can give them besides the actual money that they're wanting in that situation. Okay? Similarly, on the street, when you meet people who are panhandling, everybody can use food. I give food, not money. Okay? So, we have to have wisdom in our practice of generosity. But here we're also really trying to deal with that feeling of hurt and that clinging to I, me, my, and mine that comes when our stuff has been stolen or lost. Okay? And so instead of feeling like, oh, I was deprived, now I don't have, to create a feeling of wealth, even mentally, by imagining, your body becoming many different things and many different people, and sending them out, to people in all the different countries of the world who need all different sorts of things. And imagine, giving all your stuff, again, multiplying and becoming what others need to lead them in a good direction in their life. And the same way, giving our positive karma, our virtue, away. Okay? So that's what the verse is getting at. Yeah? And again, it doesn't mean that you just say, oh, somebody stole my stuff, forget it. Yeah? Because, people need to learn not to do that, and so on. Or, somebody embezzled money, somebody extorted money. There's all sorts of white-collar ways of stealing, not to let people continue doing that. If they're doing that, they have to be fired, But you sit down and explain to them, and you try and help them think of another way to solve whatever problem it is they're having besides doing this. Or you help them, find a way to control their greed and to develop a sense of satisfaction and contentment that I have enough, I don't need to, get in Forbes 500, Forbes 400, I don't know, whatever, that list of rich people. I don't need to do that. Yeah, my life is okay being who I am right now. Okay? So I thought there's a couple of stories in this book. For all the verses, we also included some real life stories from people. And there's two stories in this book are actually, the names aren't in it from the real people, but it happens to be, one is actually, it happens to be two of our very own Sangha members who wrote the stories for this. Okay, let me I don't know that I'll read both of them. Okay, there's one called Losing My Job but Winning Peace. Okay? As part of my work as a nurse practitioner and therapist, I joined a new group of psychologists, psychiatrists, and nurse practitioners in independent practice. The founder and leader of the group was a psychologist. It worked well, we had plenty of work, and we were doing good work that benefited others. The people involved were good, very competent. At the height, there were 9 of us, and it was also a good practice. After 3 years, the leader started to speak about financial difficulties, saying that we needed to watch how much we spent. Most of us kept on working, thinking that the situation would turn around. But the debt grew until, in my case, he owed me about $20,000. Finally, one of the psychiatrists, supported by the rest of us, got a lawyer and had the leader investigated. He discovered that the psychologist who started the business had 8 liens on his house from other people to whom he had owed money. Having a long history of dishonesty and stealing, he had been embezzling money from us. Initially, I was devastated because my perception of who he was and what he turned out to be were so different. Yeah, that's part of the difficulty in the white-collar crimes is you trusted people and you thought they were honest, and then, whoa, they turn out to be completely different. Also, I learned that hanging on to something and not recognizing the reality of what was happening, as well as attachment to reputation, were involved in my misery. Yeah. So sometimes we have red flags go up, and we ignore them, don't we? Yeah. Finally, I gave notice and said I was leaving the group. This was hard because I didn't want to abandon my clients. When I told him I was walking away, even if he didn't pay me what he owed me, he got very angry, revealing another side of him that I had been ignorant of. As time went on, I saw that no matter what he or anyone else did, my interpretation of the situation and my response to it created my experience. Okay. In other words, I had to be responsible for my thoughts and emotions instead of attributing my suffering to others. When I finally got out of the group and let it all go, it was as if a 2-ton elephant had been lifted off my back. I opened my own office, which worked out well. In the process, I learned a lot about not feeling like a victim and not being angry. For example, this man had 2 small kids. His wife had bilateral breast cancer, and the year before he had a triple bypass. His suffering was evident. In addition, I learned how to work with my mind in a way that clarified what others do is not the issue, it's how I think about their actions. Yeah, and so that's really the key. We cannot always control others' actions, but the whole thing regarding our own happiness or suffering is our response to their actions. Yeah, because we can see in many kind of situations, the situation is the same, but 2 different people will respond in 2 totally different ways. Yeah. And so you can see very clearly that happiness or suffering is not because of the situation. It's because of how we interpret it how we relate to it, how we describe the situation to ourselves. And that's what is going to call up the kind of emotional feeling we have and the behavior that we do in response. Okay? So in this case of, having our stuff stolen, one of the other things that they describe is really to mentally give it to the person. Yeah. And to say, okay, you felt like you really needed that, you thought you really needed that, I don't have it, I'm not going to die because I lost it. So, in my own heart, in my mind, I am giving it to you, and may you have happiness from it. May you feel fulfilled, yeah, so that you don't need to take things that belong to other people. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I think having things stolen is probably a common experience. Anybody here who has never had something stolen? Anybody here who's never taken what hasn't been freely given to them? Yeah. Yeah, we borrow things and don't return them. Yeah, I can't tell you how many library books the Abbey has lost. Yeah? And we don't lend them out and let people take them home. But they still vanish. Yeah? Yeah. So we have all sorts of different ways of taking what hasn't been given to us. That's a Buddhist definition of stealing. We usually think of stealing as like this nasty crime. But taking things that haven't been freely given to us, yeah, we do that, don't we? At work, at relatives, wherever it is, we take what hasn't been freely given. Oh, this is a big corporation, they won't miss it. Yeah. Whatever our justification is. But it's the same kind of mechanism, it's stealing, isn't it? Yeah. So, to another way to deal with situations in which people have taken our things is to remember times when we have taken other people's things. Yeah, or not returned what we've borrowed. And then just think, this is the result of my own action. I've taken what hasn't been given. This is the result of it. Other people take what hasn't been given. Yeah, I'm just switching the roles. So why complain? Because the basic causal energy came from me, from, my misbehavior. And then in that way our mind can be, smoother, happier, more peaceful. Yeah, not so ruffled. Okay, any questions, comments? Mm-hmm.
Joel Goldsmith once said, "Supply is not income, but outflow."
Mm-hmm. Can you explain that?
No. That would come from here, not from here.
Okay.
It felt like it resonated with the talk.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Supply is not for selfish benefit, but it's for all to be distributed.
It's not for self.
Income is not for thyself. It's for all.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and it's to benefit all, not for you individually.
Okay. So what we have is for the benefit of all beings to be shared with everybody.
Like you said, you play different roles.
Pardon me?
since it's cyclical as it is, we play a different role, we steal, and then we also experience being stolen from. And so it's best if we were to be free of our attachment to the wealth in the first place, then we don't let it fester, because when we let it fester, that's when the anger comes and we feel resentment towards someone. So you're doing yourself, you're causing more of a burden to yourself and hold on to that.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. The more we hold on to, they took my stuff, the more we suffer. Yeah.
We can look at, if we're stolen from, we can look at that as an opportunity to examine our attachment.
Yeah, it's also an opportunity to examine our attachment. Because lots of times we say, oh, I'm not attached. I'm not attached. And then as soon as that thing is gone, who took it? Yeah. Yeah, and it's amazing because we'll look at things and we'll say, I'm not attached to that. But that means at this moment, right now, at this, slight change in situation, and boy, we're attached. I remember one time I went to Bodh Gaya. I was at the stupa and we had to leave our shoes outside. I had some ripped up plastic sandals, And I came back and my shoes weren't there, and I wanted those shoes. Yeah, these ripped up plastic sandals that, if you had asked me beforehand, I said, I'm not attached to these, look at them. Yeah. Yeah, attachment is quite sneaky. Other comments or questions? Yeah.
I had one about the gun shoes
Mm-hmm.
in the beginning. I was one of these that, of course, was raised with guns. Guns were in the house. They were always loaded. We grew up with that knowledge. When I moved into Spokane, my husband worked graveyard, and we ran a really bad area of the city. People had we broke into our garage, they tried to break into our house itself. So it was just a very, dangerous area. My entire family was very, very strong in wanting me to get a gun to protect myself. And I could have, because I grew up with it, I'm used to them. But for some reason, this voice in me kept saying not to. My children were different. They're not growing up with guns in the house. So what I did instead is I had a can of pepper spray. and I felt safer that way, and I slept with my pepper spray around, and I had it up on my headboard, where I probably would have had a gun. And one night, my son was, I think, 3 years old, and in my sleep, he took my pepper spray. And I heard this coughing and carrying on, and he had taken it into the bedroom with my other son and my daughter and had sprayed the wall with it. And all of them were coughing and choking from. And at that moment, I felt absolutely happy that I had not listened to anybody to get the gun, because very well could have been burying the child.
Yep. Yep. Yeah.
Instead, we just opened up windows.
Yeah. 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 There's many stories of little kids picking up guns. Many, many. Yeah. Yeah.
You talk about loss today a little bit of professions and things.
Could you speak a little louder?
Sure. I've heard you speak about loss of things and possessions today.
Mm-hmm.
And what I struggle with is when maybe I have a coworker or someone in my life that says something derogatory to me, and I feel like I have a loss of maybe my image of my relationship with them or my self-perception. And drawing the line in words is the right thing to be loving and kind to them, and recognize that their unkindness to me is out of maybe their own suffering,
Mm-hmm.
but also find a way to relate to them and continue my relationship with them in a loving way.
Okay. And what is it exactly that they're doing that is disturbing?
Just saying something unpleasant or maybe being competitive at work. Something.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have anything to share about those?
Okay. Yeah. Well, the one about being competitive, here, this one you'll really go, oh my goodness. The idea is to give them the victory. What? What? This is ridiculous. It's un-American. I can't give them the victory. What it means is mentally, in your own mind, you just say, you want the better image? Fine, take it. I'm not going to compete with you. Yeah? Because image for me, or praise, or whatever, this is not what's important for me. If it's something important for you, and it makes you happy, please, take it. It's not important for me. Yeah? So it's a mental transformation in your mind. You still do your job, you still do good work, you still work together with that person, so that part hasn't changed. But you're just saying to yourself, I'm not going to compete with them. Yeah? Because the riches I get if I win the competition are not very great compared to the suffering that I undergo by competing, and compared to the negative deeds that I do when I compete. Because when we compete, we backbite. Yeah, we get into a lot of critical talk with somebody. All sorts of stuff happens. And just to say, none of that is the mental suffering of competition and the creating the negative deeds through speech or body are not worth getting a little bit of extra praise or a piece of paper to hang on the wall or whatever it is. Yeah. But from your side, you still use your talents, you use your creativity, and you work in a happy way.
I work as a public defender, and so I have a lot of opportunities to talk to people who are accused of, misdemeanor crimes specifically. So what kind of message can I send to them, or even just a mental message that I can send to people that I'm dealing with? Because I'm not their parent, and I'm certainly not there to punish them or really represent them, but just maybe a word or a thought or something.
Okay. Are you working with young people specifically?
All ages, 18 and younger.
Okay. And so you want something that you can say to them that would have what kind of result?
Well, not even saying it to them, but just in their presence, to have some sort of a transformative thought for them. Because they're not all receptive, they're
Yes.
not necessarily looking for transformation.
Yeah. I think sometimes listening with empathy is a big gift, because as many people get into trouble because they feel that nobody understands them. Yeah? And so if you can hear what the underlying issue is for them, like what is it that's really propelling this behavior? What is it that you're really needing? What is it that you're really trying to say? And if you can identify what that is and let that person know, then often that can help them, like somebody gets what's happening in my life. Because I'm thinking here specifically about one man I write to in prison. He's been in prison, I think he must have been 17, and I think it was for armed robbery, yeah. And as he's told me his life, it's like, you know, a home that was completely impoverished, and, you know, mother was taking drugs, father was off doing who knows what. 3 or 4 kids, I think he was the oldest, so he felt like he needed to take care of them. And he said sometimes he opened the refrigerator and the only thing that was in it was the box of baking soda. You know? And that's how he grew up. And and in getting to know him and reading some of the things he's written to me, I think like just somebody understanding, okay, oh, well that's why there was an armed robbery. And the other thing in his life, I think, that not just the physical poverty, but the thing that's come out in some of his writings is he really wanted to have a relationship with his mom, but his mom was not available. You know? And for somebody to be able to say, you know, if you're talking to somebody, and to say, oh, you know, you would really like to have a relationship with your parent, but they're not available, are they? And that hurts, doesn't it? And for somebody to say, oh, wow, that person gets what's happening in me, can be, very, I don't know what the word is, but I think you understand, yeah? So I know PDs don't often have much time to really talk to the clients, but sometimes, something like that could come in. Or another thing is just to have maybe some verses from the Dhammapada. Have them, Dhammapada is one of the books with short verses that the Buddha said, but they're very profound verses. Have them kind of on the walls, lying around, maybe even have the little pieces of paper. They can take a verse home with them and contemplate. Yeah? Because a lot of the verses in the Dhammapada, they have nothing to do with religion. They have to do with, kind heart and understanding and like that. Yeah. But it's really nice that you want to do that for your clients.
Most limited people. I mean, some are inside. Some of them are
Yeah.
As Thich Nhat Hanh once said, I heard him say one time when I was at one of his talks, if I'd been raised around sea pirates, I would have been a sea pirate.
Yeah. That's exactly it.